So talk me through the fact that Brisbane was the sole bidder in this. Does this indicate that the appeal of hosting the Games has diminished in recent years?
No, it's all to do with the new process, the new norm that's been developed by the IOC to reduce the cost of hosting, with the objective in time, I think, of encouraging more cities and mid-scale cities like Brisbane and southeast Queensland for hosting for the Games. So it's part of a new bidding process that has been developed by the IOC, and something that obviously Brisbane, southeast Queensland and Australia engaged comprehensively with, and we are absolutely delighted with the win that occurred last night.
It's really some good news, particularly for Australians, under lockdown at the moment, to be able to celebrate this win. Minister, talk me through also the infrastructure investment that's involved, right? I understand, looking through some of the operational documents, a big focus will be reusing existing infrastructure rather than, building out these white elephants. Do you know the cost versus the benefit, any of these numbers at this point?
Well, a lot of that work remains to be done, but there's a fair bit of detail in the bidding documents submitted to the IOC. And you're right, one of the features of the southeast Queensland, the Brisbane bid, was the reuse of existing infrastructure. So 85% of the infrastructure is already in existence or will be temporary for the Games, and that again is to try and reduce the cost of bidding for and hosting a Games. The IOC are clearly quite focused and concerned that that's the case. And again, as I said, it encourages more cities like Brisbane to be able to participate, and there's a partnership being developed between the Australian government and the Queensland government to assess and build the infrastructure, additional infrastructure that will be required.
Minister, there has been a lot of skepticism in recent years over the economic benefits for host cities. What do you expect
people of Southeast
the impact
Queensland
to be?
In any case, regardless of Games?
Minister, it seems that we lost you for a second there, but I was just asking about the economic impact for Brisbane coming from the Games. Well,
the projected economic impact for Queensland is in excess of $8 billion as projected, and over $17 billion for Australia nationally, which is really good news as we come out of COVID and recover from the events of the last 18 months or so. And in the terms of employment, it's about 120,000 jobs, and 90,000 of those in southeast Queensland. So a significant contribution to the growth and development of southeast Queensland. And of course, in that context, that economic development is really positive for those local communities.
And of course, Minister, you're in Tokyo, where we've seen, I think at last count, over 70 cases of people within the Olympic Athletes Village and within that complex testing positive for COVID. I'm just wondering what the experience is like for athletes and for the Australian delegation there this year.
Well, it's certainly very, very different to any other Games that I think have been experienced because of that. There's very strong protocols to manage the virus. So anyone, athletes, people are being tested daily. So that's a very, very strong testing regime. And of course, in the circumstance they do get test positive, they're being isolated. So it's a very, very different Games. I think the Games will be memorable for the fact that they were conducted during this COVID environment. Tokyo is a very different city from what I've experienced previously because of the restrictions around COVID, and there's a lot of effort that's being made by the IOC to ensure that the separation between the athletes and the community here in Tokyo protect both the community in Tokyo and the athletes. So, and a considerable effort being made with quite strong protocols to support the Games continuing safely.
Minister, of course, at the same time, your other hat, you are, of course, the Minister for Aged Care Services as well. There's been considerable dissatisfaction with the rollout of the vaccine process here in Australia. Has the government let down the aged care sector, the most vulnerable people, and the people that look after them?
Well, one of the big differences between this year and last year is the fact that every aged care facility in the country has had 2 visits to ensure that the residents have had the opportunity to take up vaccination, and the vaccination rate for residents in aged care is now over 85%, which is really good news. We're in excess of 40% for vaccination of staff, and continuing to ramp up that section of the community as well. And the rollout itself continues to pick up pace as we increase the availability of vaccines, and that was always going to be the case. And the effectiveness and the importance of vaccination, I think, has already been demonstrated in the few cases that we've had in aged care in Australia. So I'm really pleased to see that the vaccinations that are being administered are having a positive effect.
But the broader vaccination rollout still remains incredibly slow, right? And there's been lots of criticism that the government's goal of having aged care services and employees vaccinated, well, that probably should have been done months ago. What really is the hold-up? You know, if there is ample supply coming into the country, why wasn't this done earlier?
Well, the supply and the increase in supply rates of vaccine coming into the country has stepped up over the last few weeks, and supply has always been one of the constraints of the rollout. We have had to contend, obviously, with the change in health advice with respect to the administration of AstraZeneca, and that's had an impact on the way that we have conducted our rollout and the age cohorts that it's been recommended for, and even the impact of health advice into the rollout into aged care has had an impact. We initially planned to vaccinate staff and residents at the same time, but the advice that we got from international experience is that we shouldn't do that because the potential impact of side effects from vaccination on staff attendance and therefore on care. So we've had to contend with a number of issues that have cropped up during the process of the rollout. I think that we've worked really hard, and I know we've worked really hard to meet all of those challenges as they've occurred, including the changes in health advice around AstraZeneca. And we all want to see as many people as possible vaccinated as soon as possible. And we will do that. We will provide the opportunity for every Australian or everyone living in Australia who wants to access a vaccine by the end of the year to do so. And I think the vaccine supply figures and even the vaccination numbers that are coming out on a regular basis, you know, we're about 1 million a week that we're getting through now. So that number is growing rapidly, and as we open more outlets, as we get more vaccine available, it will continue to grow, and that will make a real difference.